Hey, this is Mark, and I'm here in San Mateo, Redwood City area, and again in front of the San Mateo County History Museum. I've yet to go inside. I want to go in one of these days, but I just finished teaching a class down here and wanted to share my reading from The Golden Present, Daily Reading, Inspirational Readings by Swami Satchidananda. There's some construction going on, a lot of construction down here in Redwood City, actually. So hopefully I'm coming through okay. This is a reading for March 15th. You can't fly like a bird is the topic. Ultimately, the higher will is the final authority. In the case of human beings, free will has been given with certain limitations. You are not free to do everything you want. You can't fly like a bird. There are many other such limitations. Your will is limited, but within those limitations you are allowed to do certain things freely. Those things are to be helpful to other beings, to be serviceful to other beings, and to live a harmonious and useful life. To live a harmonious and useful life. You are free to do that. At the same time, you are also free not to live that way. By your own free will, you will face the result of whatever you do. You are even told what is right and what is wrong, but nobody interferes with your free will. It's been that way since the very first person. According to the Bible, Adam was asked not to eat the fruit, but God had given him free will, and Adam chose to eat the fruit. Did God stop him? No. That is where your free will comes in. You are free even to do wrong things, but you cannot escape from the guilt of having done something like that. That's why Adam felt guilty. Was it God's intent to make him feel guilty? No. Through that guilt, God wanted him to learn a lesson. Learning a lesson is more important, so you are allowed to commit the mistake, feel guilty, and from that learn the lesson. Experience is the best teacher. That's why free will is given. Those who really want to use free will in the right way would choose by their own free will to give themselves into the hands of the higher will. With your free will, you say, Lord, you have given me free will. I know it has limitations. I can only do certain things, and if I try to go beyond those limitations, your will comes and stops me. So what is the idea of having my free will? To have fun? It's better not to use my free will because ultimately you are the boss. Your will is the final one, so I give my free will into your hands. You gave it to me, now please take it back and do whatever you want. With your own free will, you give yourself into the hands of God. You never lose by giving, or we never lose by giving ourselves into those hands. By giving ourselves completely, we gain more of God. We get all of God if we give our all. Then there is no destiny and there are no problems. You can't fly like a bird. Hi there. So, in this reading, what's interesting to me is I think about some of the other readings that talk about, all of our actions are being done by a higher power, by a God who's moving through us to inspire and initiate every action, whether we go this way or go that way. And I even had a conversation with a friend of mine that read one of the readings and said, well, he agreed with part of it until it sounded like we didn't have free will. And so it's interesting now with this reading, it addresses that and speaks about how Swami Satchidananda offers this idea that we do have free will, and to use that free will to actually ask it to be turned back over to, the power that gave us that will to begin with. So I find that kind of interesting because, like all these readings, it expands the way that I think about the spiritual path and spiritual thinking, which is so expansive that as soon as I think I've got it, or I've okay, now all of this is, following this way that I see things, something comes along and, opens up some more thinking about this. And a lot of it, I like this idea, and other few readings have talked about making mistakes, and how we have this opportunity, God may be giving us inspiration to go this direction, and then we're like, no, I don't want to go that way, I'm going to go this way. Or a parent or a friend or somebody who's, helping to give us some guidance, may offer us this direction, and for whatever reason, we want to go the other direction. And is that our free will that's doing that? Is that, some higher governing resource that knows that by going in that other way, we're going to learn something we really must learn? Why else would we go that way? And maybe there is that, there is a gut feeling in us that knows that going the other way is what our soul needs, for this life's journey. Or it may feel that it's coming out of a place of rebellion, just to be contrary for the sake of being contrary. But even that, I think there's some greater lesson, to it, rather than doing something just, because we want to create harm in the long run. I think there's something in us that's trying to break free from whatever it is that feels like is binding us. And by making some of these other choices, we're finding our own voice, finding a way that life makes sense to us, is why I believe that we do it, even when we're being contrary. And then I think about that on a bigger scale, other people in the world who are being contrary or doing things that are against what we want them to do. It's like the child who's disobeying the parent. It's that person out in the world who's disobeying what we think are the common moral values and impulses in life. But is there some greater reason why that's happening? Because it's triggering some other ripple effect of awakening, of connecting with our consciousness and deeper part of ourselves that knows. It's the ego that gets so tangled up. It's the ego that wants to feel like it has free reign, and it's the one that's completely in charge. And there's so many books about ego, so many discussions about it, that I've really enjoyed learning more and more about it, observing my own, observing others, and looking at when have those served me. And a lot of times I feel like it has, and when have the times been that it's it's put me in a corner, and there's been something I've had to learn from that. And you know what? I had to learn, and I imagine I'll have to keep learning. Yesterday's reading talked about, we will make mistakes. What did he say? Don't be afraid of failing, Somewhere, and he said, yeah, you have to fail. We have to make these mistakes. So sometimes people need to feel like they can fly like a bird, and then they fall and then break a bone or whatever happens, or there's some consequence. And I think that's a big part of this journey that I'm learning about, and that yoga speaks about with the cause and effect. There are consequences to our actions, and we can do whatever we want to do. It doesn't have to only go one way, and I appreciate that about this whole experience of being a human being. And there was something I thought about the other day, that there was somebody on the street who I've seen a number of times, who does seem to have a mental health issue going on, and often is in his own world, and isn't taking care of himself and his basic hygiene and all that. But I noticed that going past him, like, he would step out of the way sometimes when I would walk by if he saw me, or he would stop. Some of the chatter he was doing would become quieter, and there is something in him that knew, as I don't know, it felt to me like some semblance of courtesy or kindness of others, even in that state. And is that something that we learn, as young kids? All of us who started out in a family and being surrounded by some form of love and care, that we learn some of these very basic things that stay with us. And it's an interesting thing like that it's just we choose to do, or in that instance that person chose to still show some courtesy and kindness that came from where, where inside. Is it nature? Is it nurture? That type of thing, I suppose. All right. Well, I'm grateful to think about this reading in context of how I'm doing these readings, just everyday life stuff. I feel like I want to read this again and just reflect about, we really can choose to do whatever we want, and interesting the things we are choosing to do. Yeah. I'll leave it at that. Thanks for watching or listening today, and enjoy your day, and I'll see you tomorrow. All right, thanks.